That in our industry we use phrase, "Oh, it's all business." I'm sentimental about those guys' relationships that we cultivate here, important to me, and I want to wish them with their new teams. Kobe, Vooch, Io, Kevin, Dalen, Javon, Julian. I wish them well with their teams. When we approached trade deadline this year, we were focused on three things. First one is where we are and where we're going. The play-in is not our goal. A championship is. We know where we are in standings, and we're not satisfied with being in the middle. As an organization or for our fans. At the same time, we are committed to building the right way without skipping steps. This process takes time, but we've already made meaningful shift in how we're approaching roster building and development. This process takes time. It's my responsibility to make this better and to move the organization towards something sustainable at the highest level. Number two will be building around experienced youth and new mix of players. We are adding experienced youth alongside Josh, Matas, Ice, Noah, Jalen. We are intentional about surrounding these core pieces with players who have real NBA experience, along with upcoming draft picks. Pieces we believe can grow together over time. Evaluating long-term fits. And the last, but not least, obviously, financial flexibility and draft capital. We've maintained sustained flexibility heading into the offseason. That gives us real options, whether that's free agency, trades, the draft, or continuing investment in development. Flexibility allows us to be patient, but also decisive when the right opportunity presents itself. I believe you cannot have too many draft picks in terms of how you can operate for the future. Billy and his staff have done an excellent job keeping this group prepared and competitive. I trust them completely. We're aligned, and the players are bought in. Everything we are doing is tied to building something meaningful towards the long term. With that, I'll take your questions.
Casey, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Artūras, in the past, you've been seemingly hesitant to enact this much significant change in one instance to seemingly take a small step back in the short term for potential long-term gain. What changed?
I think the timing of stage that we're in as a team. We started this last year. And go into this season, a lot of decisions had to be made with a lot of free agents. And that was a great opportunity for us during trade deadline to address and get a lot of draft capital and target very specific players and, take a look at them for the rest of the season.
Quick follow-up. I mean, Kobe and Io were expiring, but so are Sexton and Simon. So are you still, you talked about the evaluation period for the remainder of the season, but you still face financial decisions this summer. What was the reason behind trading both Kobe and Io?
I think we have a lot of flexibility this summer. And during the trade deadline, you're always risking to lose your free agents for nothing, right? You can still go back in free agency. We're going to have a lot of room under the cap. So we thought that was good timing to make these changes, and we did.
Joe, go ahead.
Artūras, can you hear me?
Yes.
Two quick questions. First one, do you regret not doing this a year earlier? Because it seems like you guys wasted a year coming to the same conclusion that could have been found at this point last year.
I do not. I think we were at that stage as well. We continue evaluating our, young guys and, Josh, it was Mata's first year. So I think right now it's a good timing and we addressed it.
And then the other question is, you kind of smacked around the idea of second round picks for the last 3 or 4 years, saying they are not good currency. And now you have like 30 of them. So what changed there?
Well, second round picks are currency in our industry, and you cannot operate and acquire players and trade players. And I think, we addressed it during the trade deadline, and, you know, hopefully they're going to contribute to, our, you know, uh, during the draft, during free agency, and trying to build this team.
Joel?
Hey, Artūras, can you hear me?
Yes.
So obviously, it feels like for some time in terms of competitive integrity, you and ownership and Billy have been sort of aligned in the previous direction. What were the conversations like with Michael and Billy both as you decided to sort of make this hard pivot?
Well, Jerry and Michael have been always supportive, and they were, obviously involved also during this trade deadline, and we worked close together. I've talked also to Billy during the season, prior to trade deadline, and during the trade deadline as well. So I think we're in the lockstep. With the stage that we are in. And those moves had to be made, and everybody were on the same page.
And just quick follow-up, Artūras. I know previous to this point, you weren't necessarily a fan of the word rebuild. I guess, how are you describing the team's direction now, and what does the window look like for you to maybe get back to the standard you're hoping for?
Well, I'm still staying away from that word. I just would call it as a stage that we are in. I think we have experienced, young players, and we're gonna keep on adding player in the draft, and then we're gonna address a lot of stuff during free agency. I think unfortunate that Noah wasn't able to play this year. He was injured, so I'm looking forward to seeing him next year. But he's going to be also a big part of our future, and we're going to continue evaluating now for the next 30 games players that were here, and the new players that are coming in.
Julia?
Here, Artūras, when you talk about kind of that evaluation period, can you outline what you're looking for in terms of maybe a few bullet points of types of players, just kind of profile that you're looking for as you approach that free agency and draft process?
Yeah, so we still gonna stay obviously with our style of play, and players that we acquired gonna help us to maintain that. In terms of roster balance, it's probably, there's still work to do, but next 30 games are going to be very, very crucial to evaluation period to see what these, players can do. I mean, we individually kind of targeted, players in these trades. You know, some of them are, obviously free agents, and we're gonna have to make decisions, But in terms of style of play and the character and the toughness and there's a lot of players from players that we brought in have that in their profile. So without going into specific players, I think we're gonna have time to evaluate them.
And then just a follow-up from me. This is obviously like a painful process. You're trading away some of these, fan favorites like Kobe and Io, having to maybe take a little bit of a step backwards or sideways to make that progress that you want to. What's kind of your pitch, I guess, of why that is worth it? Because I think from the outside, this can be a very difficult thing to stomach of watching these players go away for what might not feel like a huge return, I think, for some
Well,
of
I
them.
think being in the middle, and Julia, I mean, I think it's being in the middle is what we don't want to do. I think we've seen that for the past 4 years, and we want to change that. And at the stage that we're in right now, I think we have to take a look at different combinations of players. And I'm definitely worried about, so many, new players on the team and how little time we have, for cohesion and get to know each other and all this stuff. But I trust Billy and his staff. They're going to do their best, for the next couple of months to work with this group.
Thanks.
We're gonna use that for sure.
What's that?
Will,
Hate
go ahead.
being-
Guys, if you can mute your mics for me, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Artūras, I'm just curious to follow up on sort of some of the players that you brought in. It seems like Ivy and Dillingham in particular are guys that you would potentially want to keep around longer term, but the backcourt is very loaded right now with just 6 or so guards that you would presume all need to get minutes. How do you plan to manage those minutes to be able to get a good evaluation of those guys that you'd potentially want to keep longer term? And would you consider buying out any of the guards to try to open up more space for them?
No, I think it's always about availability. We were not able to stay for long periods of time healthy, and I think we continue in that space. So I think, in terms of we always shorthanded. So all these players going to get a chance to play and gonna be able to display what they can do. In terms of specific players, obviously Jaden was, top 5 pick, a couple, 4 years ago, and 2 years ago it was, obviously averaging 17 points. Simons has been in the league for a while, has been in, score. We've seen him, when we played him against Boston a couple times this year. Colin Sexton has been always a warrior, hard worker anywhere he's been. Rob Dillingham has been, a couple of years ago, it was top 10 pick, and he was really talented coming out of college. We're very familiar with him, so looking forward to see him. Yeah, and Miller, Yabusele, and Richards are good additions for our group.
We're gonna get to a few more. Sam, go ahead.
Could you hear that?
Yes, Sam.
Oh, thanks. You addressed this, you haven't had an appetite for doing this kind of thing. So I understand that over the last 3 years. But also it seemed like, a few weeks ago, you had this win in Minneapolis, very impressive on the road. Clippers have been hot. The team beat Clippers. Boston had a win there. And, you never know about reports, but, the notion seemed to be, well, the Bulls maybe, maybe they could add on to this around 500, chance to make a move. Maybe if they, there's a lot of talk about what maybe the Bulls are buyers. Did something happen about then that changed things?
No, I think I'm gonna tell you, we just stayed in the middle. We get to 500, then we get 2 or 3 games under. I mean, look at our standings. We're going to be again in the 9th, 10th spot. It's not good enough. And again, I think it's a combination of things. I think timing, marketing. I mean, I'm not marketing. Market dictates, a lot of times your trade deadline. I think, those guys were really good for us, but we just couldn't get over the hump. And I think, those decisions have to be made, and the timing was good for us to make those moves. And we'll see how those work out, because I think it's always consistency, right? And we just couldn't get consistency, consistently good and consistently healthy. I like everybody else in the league, we hate injuries. We can, blame luck or, schedule, but everybody's dealing with it. And I think it's a combination of things that contribute to what we did on, trade deadline.
Drew, go ahead.
Hey, Artūras.
Hey, Drew.
What specifically has to be different a year from now for you to say that things are working?
Well, I think we need some times, and and the stage that we're in right now, we're gonna continue to look at growth in terms of our current players that we had here before the trade deadline, like like Josh, like Matas, like Ice, Jalen, Noah, and add another player in the draft. While we are building and developing, I think it's very prudent to to look for opportunities to get players that can fit your team, and I think starting right now, I think our pro group is going to focus on watching games and on very specific lists of players that we're going to target during free agency. Also, we're going to watch a lot of college games, international games, and we're going to focus on draft, and constantly try to get better. I don't know what we're going to look like in a year because I don't know what's going to happen during the draft, and I don't know what's going to happen in free agency. So I think it's very early to say what we're going to look like, and I also don't know what's going to happen next 30 games.
We're going to take 3 last quick ones. Mike McGraw, go ahead.
Hey, Artūras, you mentioned that you wanted to keep the same playing style, and you also talked about all the injuries you guys have had. I know you've looked good at times playing the fast-paced style, but you got in constant hamstring, calf strains. You're still undersized on the front line. Is this sustainable to play that style of play?
Well, I think I think a lot of those injuries, I think it's league wide. I think everyone is. So last year when we tried to play fast, I think I'm not going to say we're the only team that played, but it was kind of new, and our pace was 20th in preseason when everybody started, try to adopting, the same style of play. Is that sustainable? I think, taking in consideration how young we are and lack of experience, I think the execution in a half court we lack. So we have to run. And obviously young legs. So I think we're going to continue playing this style of play. And hopefully, obviously our, half court execution is going to get better with experience. So.
We're going to get 2 more, Sully and then Joel.
Hi, Kay. What
Well.
what gives you the confidence that you're going to get the kind of a free agent that can make a difference, considering the way the organization is right now?
I mean, all we can do is prepare for free agency and have our targets in play, and we have a lot of flexibility. I think Chicago is still a desirable market for players to come, and we're just gonna take one thing at a time.
Go ahead, Joel.
Artūras, so KC, when we first got on, I believe, asked you what changed. Obviously, it seems to be an increased value in seconds and getting younger, this sort of pivot. And Sam also asked you about that string of wins that felt like you guys wanted to be competitive. And you came into the year in the fall mentioning the 15-5 stretch to close last year. So when exactly did you decide you wanted to sort of tear this thing down and go a different direction? Because it still seems kind of unclear to me at what point this year you decided to go a different direction.
I think we started the year with very mild expectations, right? We were talking about the growth of players, and we're talking about getting better, and we're talking about developing our players. So it's not surprising to us. Obviously, I don't know if I communicated well, but it was a very unique situation. We were talking about 7 or potentially 8 players being free agents, and a team kind of evaluating those players and being in a flux, and and in order for us to get out of the middle, I think those were the moves to be made, and this was great opportunity, and we took it to be really active.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate your time. Thanks, AK.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Artūras. Appreciate